A shattered screen, a typo, a desperate plea sent into the void of a freezing Chicago night. When Elara Voss pressed send, she thought she was reaching out to her brother for salvation. She didn't know she was whispering directly into the ear of the city's most dangerous predator. One wrong digit turned a domestic tragedy into a gangland war. The reply wasn't a question. It wasn't a comfort. It was a promise written in blood. I'm on my way. This isn't a fairy tale about a knight in shining armor. This is what happens when you accidentally summon the devil to save you. The silence in the penthouse on North Lake Shore Drive was heavier than the marble coffee table Elara Voss was currently lying next to. It was a silence that screamed. The air had been filled with the terrifying wet thud of a fist meeting flesh, followed by the sickening crunch of cartilage giving way. Now the only sound was the hum of the sub-zero refrigerator in the kitchen and the distant muffled wail of wind whipping off Lake Michigan against the reinforced glass. Elara didn't try to move yet. Experience had taught her that moving too soon attracted attention, and attention was the last thing she wanted from Blaine Hart. Blaine, a junior partner at the prestigious law firm of Hart, Hale and Associates, was currently standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke suit. "You make me do this, Elara," Blaine said, his voice calm, terrifyingly reasonable. He checked his reflection in the glass, smoothing a stray hair. "I come home after a long day defending ungrateful morons, and I just want peace. Is a clean apartment too much to ask? Is a dinner that isn't burnt too much to ask?" Elara tasted copper. She bit her tongue to keep from sobbing. The pain in her side was sharp, a hot poker driving into her lungs with every shallow breath. Ribs, she thought, her mind detaching from the pain with practiced dissociation. Definitely ribs this time. "I'm going to the Drake for a drink," Blaine announced, grabbing his cashmere overcoat. "Clean this up and fix your face. We have the charity gala at the Art Institute. If you embarrass me with a bruise, Elara, I swear to God, tonight will look like a warm-up." The heavy oak door slammed shut. The lock clicked, the distinct heavy thunk of the deadbolt engaging. He locked her in again. Elara waited. She counted by the throb in her side. Then she moved. A strangled cry escaped her lips as she dragged herself across the heated hardwood floors. Her phone. Where was her phone? Blaine usually took it, a twisted game of isolation he loved to play, but tonight, in his rage, he had slapped it out of her hand. It had slid under the minimalist leather sofa. Her fingers, trembling and stained with a smear of blood from her split lip, clawed at the darkness beneath the furniture. Cold glass met her fingertips. She pulled it out. The screen was spiderwebbed, a kaleidoscope of broken glass, but the glow remained. Low battery. Panic. Cold and sharp, flooded her veins. She had time for one text, just one. If she called, he might hear the voicemail later. If she called the police, Blaine would spin it. He always did. He was the golden boy of Chicago law. She was just the hysterical girlfriend with a history of anxiety. He owned the narrative. She needed Kai. Her brother would come. He was a mechanic in the South Loop, tough as nails and twice as stubborn. He wouldn't ask questions. He would just bring a tire iron. Her vision blurred. The pain was making the room spin. She pulled up the messaging app, her thumb hovering over the keypad. She knew Kai's number by heart. A wave of nausea hit her. Her hand spasmed. She hit the wrong digit. She didn't check. She couldn't. The darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision. She typed, her fingers slipping on the cracked screen. "He broke my ribs. Can't breathe. Please help. Apartment 4B. Door is locked." She pressed send. The little arrow whooshed away. The screen flickered, the battery icon flashing red one last time before the phone went black. Elara rested her cheek against the cold floor. She had sent the beacon. Now she just had to stay awake until Kai kicked the door down. Miles away in the VIP section of the Velvet Lounge, a private club that didn't appear on maps, the atmosphere was very different. The bass of the music was a low thrum, felt in the chest rather than heard. The air smelled of expensive cigars and danger. Ronan Vale sat in a dark leather booth, a glass of amber liquid untouched in front of him. He wasn't a large man in the way a bouncer is large. He didn't need bulk to be terrifying. It was the stillness of him. He was a predator at rest. He was the capo of the Vale crime family, a man who had consolidated power in Chicago by removing the impulsive and the stupid from the equation. "The shipment from the docks is secure, boss," Garrick said. Garrick was Ronan's right hand, a giant of a man with scars that mapped out a violent history. "The Russians are backing off." Ronan nodded, his eyes scanning the room. He was bored. Peace was profitable, but it was tedious. His personal phone buzzed on the table. This was a number only a few people had. His mother, who was dead, his 2 lieutenants, his lawyer, and the cleaner. He frowned. He picked up the device. A sleek, encrypted smartphone. Unknown number. "He broke my ribs. Can't breathe. Please help. Apartment 4B. Door is locked." Ronan stared at the message. The area code was local. The grammar was frantic. "Garrick," Ronan said, his voice low, cutting through the ambient noise of the club. "Boss, who has this number?" "No one outside the circle." "Why?" Ronan slid the phone across the table. Garrick read the text, his thick brows knitting together. "Wrong number. Junkie looking for a score?" Ronan took the phone back. He looked at the words again. "He broke my ribs." He had grown up in a house where screams were ignored. His father had been a monster who believed fear was a currency. Ronan had buried his father, but the sound of a woman in pain still triggered a cold, lethal rage in him that he usually kept on a very tight leash. "Trace it," Ronan commanded. Garrick pulled out a tablet. He didn't ask if Ronan was sure. He didn't mention that they had a meeting with the union reps. He just worked. "Triangulating," Garrick muttered. "Tower on North Lake Shore. It's a residential block, the Obsidian Tower, expensive." "Apartment 4B?" Ronan read from the text. "That's a fortress building. Doorman. Key fobs." "Why are we caring, boss?" Garrick asked, though he was already standing up, buttoning his jacket. "It's some domestic dispute, not our business." Ronan stood up. The room seemed to shrink around him. "She texted me, Garrick." Fate is a funny thing. If she had texted the cops, she'd be dead by the time they filed the paperwork. She texted the devil instead. Ronan typed a reply, his thumbs moving with precision. "I'm on my way." He pocketed the phone. "Bring the car, and bring the medical kit, the real one." "And the heat?" Garrick asked, patting the bulge under his arm. Ronan's eyes cold and dead. Always. Elara was drifting in a gray fog. The pain had settled into a dull, rhythmic throbbing that synced with her heartbeat. She heard a noise. Ding! The elevator. Kai, she thought, relief washing over her so strongly it almost made her weep. Kai made it. She tried to push herself up, but her arm gave way. She collapsed back onto the floor, gasping. She heard heavy footsteps in the hallway, not the scuff of Kai's work boots. These were hard soles, purposeful, fast. Blaine. Panic spiked again. If Blaine came back and found her on the floor, found the phone, the doorknob rattled, locked. "Open it," a voice said from the other side. It wasn't Blaine's voice, it was deeper, smoother, like gravel wrapped in silk. And it wasn't Kai. I can't," she whispered, though she knew he couldn't hear her. There was a pause, then a sound that Elara would never forget. Crack. The expensive, reinforced oak door frame splintered. The door flew open, hitting the wall with a deafening bang. 2 men stepped into the apartment. The first was a mountain of a man, bald, with a neck as thick as a tree trunk. But it was the second man who drew her eye. He was wearing a suit that cost more than her car. He had dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that looked like shattered obsidian. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like an executioner. Ronan scanned the room in a single second. He saw the overturned chair. He saw the blood on the marble table. And he saw the woman curled in a fetal position on the rug, her face pale, her lips blue. He crossed the room in long strides, crouching beside her. He didn't touch her immediately. He hovered, assessing. "You texted me," he said. It wasn't a question. Elara looked up at him, her vision swimming. "You're not Kai." "No," Ronan said. "I'm Ronan." He gently touched her jaw, turning her face to the light. His fingers were warm, rough, but incredibly gentle. "Where is he?" "Gone," she wheezed. "Bar, the Drake." Ronan looked back at Garrick. "Check the rooms. Make sure we're alone." Garrick moved with surprising stealth for a big man, sweeping the penthouse. "Clear, boss, but this guy, he's got taste. This is Blaine Hart's place, the lawyer." Ronan's eyes narrowed. Hart, the one who defends the traffickers the volatile Russians use. The very same. Ronan turned his attention back to Elara. "Can you move?" "Ribs," she gasped. Ronan nodded. He slipped his arms under her, one beneath her knees, the other supporting her back. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing. The movement jostled her ribs, and she let out a sharp cry, squeezing her eyes shut. "I know," he murmured, his mouth close to her ear. "I've got you. Breathe shallow." He carried her toward the door. The shattered door frame hung loosely. Where are you taking me?" Elara asked, fear warring with the pain. "Somewhere he can't find you," Ronan said. "The hospital?" Ronan paused at the threshold. "Hospitals ask questions. Police fill out reports. Lawyers like Hart make those reports disappear. If you want to live, you come with me." Elara looked at him, really looked at him. He was dangerous. Every instinct she had screamed it. But looking back at the apartment, the cage she had lived in, she knew the alternative. "Okay," she whispered. They reached the elevator. The doors slid open, and Blaine Hart stepped out. Blaine blinked. He was holding a takeout bag from a burger joint. Apparently, he hadn't gone to the Drake after all. He looked at the shattered door of his apartment. Then he looked at the man in the dark suit holding his girlfriend. "What the hell is going on?" Blaine demanded, dropping the bag. His face flushed red. The transition from confusion to arrogance instantaneous. "Put her down." "Who do you think you are? I'll have you arrested for kidnapping and breaking and entering." Ronan didn't step back. He didn't flinch. He just held Elara tighter. "Garrick," Ronan said calmly. Garrick stepped out from behind Ronan, blocking Blaine's path to the apartment. "You broke her ribs," Ronan said to Blaine. His voice was conversational, which made it all the more terrifying. "She fell," Blaine spat. "She's clumsy and she's mine. Put her down before I call the commissioner. I have him on speed dial." Ronan smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was a smile that promised violence. "You have the police commissioner," Ronan said. "I have the city." Ronan nodded to Garrick. Garrick moved. It was a blur of motion. A heavy fist connected with Blaine's stomach, folding the lawyer in half. As Blaine wheezed, gasping for air, Garrick grabbed him by the expensive lapels of his coat and slammed him against the elevator wall. Elara flinched, burying her face in Ronan's chest. "Don't look," Ronan ordered softly. "We don't have time for this trash, boss," Garrick grunted, holding Blaine up by his neck. Blaine's feet were dangling off the ground, his face turning a shade of purple. "You're right," Ronan said. He stepped into the elevator, carrying Elara. He looked at Blaine, who was clawing at Garrick's hand. "Mr. Hart," Ronan said. "My name is Ronan Vale. You might want to ask your Russian friends who I am. If you come looking for her, I won't send Garrick next time. I'll come myself." Ronan nodded to Garrick. "Leave him, for now." Garrick dropped Blaine. The lawyer crumpled to the floor, coughing and retching. The elevator doors began to close. The last thing Elara saw was Blaine looking up, eyes wide with terror as he realized exactly who had just walked into his life. As the elevator descended, silence returned, but this time, it wasn't the silence of fear. "You're the Mafia," Elara whispered, her head resting against his shoulder. Ronan looked down at her. "Does that scare you more than him?" Elara thought about the cold floor, the locked door, the years of gaslighting. "No," she said, and then the adrenaline finally crashed. The darkness took her completely. Elara woke up to the smell of antiseptic and lavender. It was a strange combination. She blinked her eyes open. She wasn't in a hospital room. The ceiling was high, adorned with crown molding. A heavy velvet curtain was drawn across a window, letting in a sliver of morning light. She tried to sit up, and a sharp pull in her side stopped her. She looked down. Her torso was wrapped professionally in compression bandages. She was wearing a soft, oversized t-shirt that wasn't hers. Careful. She turned her head. Sitting in a wingback chair in the corner of the room was a woman. She looked to be middle-aged with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and a face that had seen everything. She wore a nurse's scrub top over black slacks. "I'm Lila," the woman said, standing up. "Former trauma nurse at Northwestern. Now I work for Mr. Vale. You have fractured ribs, a severe concussion, and extensive bruising on your left hip." "Where am I?" Elara asked, her voice raspy. "Safe house," Lila said, pouring a glass of water. She brought it to the bedside table. "Mr. Vale's orders were to keep you sedated through the night. You needed the rest." Elara took the water. Her hands were shaking. "Is he here?" "He's downstairs," Lila said. "He's been waiting for you to wake up." Elara drank the water. Memories of the night before flooded back. The text, the elevator, the way Blaine had looked, terrified. "I need to leave," Elara said, though the panic wasn't as high as she expected. "Blaine, he'll find me. He has investigators. He has cops." Lila looked at her with a pity that was mixed with hardness. "Honey, you're in a house owned by the Wolf of Chicago. The only way Blaine Hart gets in here is if he's in a body bag." The door opened. Ronan walked in. He had changed out of the suit from the night before. He was wearing dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. He looked less like a corporate raider and more like a soldier. "Lila, give us a minute," he said. His voice was low. Lila nodded and left the room, closing the door softly. Ronan walked to the foot of the bed. He didn't come too close. He seemed to understand that she needed space. "How is the pain?" he asked. "Manageable," Elara lied. "You're a bad liar," Ronan noted. "Lila gave you strong painkillers. Use them." "Why did you come?" Elara asked. This was the question that had been burning in her mind. "You're a crime boss. I'm nobody. I sent a wrong number text. You could have ignored it." Ronan crossed his arms. He looked out the window, through the crack in the curtains. "Do you know what my father used to do?" Ronan asked, not looking at her. "He used to beat my mother, like clockwork. He'd come home drunk, and he'd take out the weak on her." Elara stayed silent. "I was a kid," Ronan continued. "I was too small to stop him. One night, I tried to call the cops. My father found me. He broke my arm." He flexed his left hand unconsciously. "I swore that once I was big enough, no man would ever hurt a woman in my city without answering to me." He turned his obsidian eyes back to her. "You texted the wrong number, Elara, but you got the right person." Elara felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ronan said grimly, "because now we have a problem." "What problem?" "Blaine Hart isn't just a lawyer. He's the money man for the Russo Bratva, the Russian mob." Elara's blood ran cold. I knew he had shady clients. I didn't know." "He launders their money through real estate developments," Ronan explained. "By taking you, I didn't just break up a domestic dispute. I humiliated a high-ranking asset of a rival family. The Russos will see this as an act of aggression. Elara sat up, wincing. So I started a war. The war was already coming, Ronan said. You just lit the fuse. He walked to the side of the bed and placed a new phone on the nightstand. Your old phone is gone, untraceable. This is yours now. It has one number in it, mine. What happens now? Elara asked. Now, Ronan said. You stay here until you heal. And while you heal, I'm going to dismantle Blaine Hart's life piece by piece. He'll come for me, Elara said. He's obsessive. Ronan leaned down, his face inches from hers. She could smell the scent of sandalwood and expensive tobacco. Let him come, Ronan whispered. I'm hungry. The Chicago winter had turned cruel. Outside the safe house, a fortress disguised as a mid-century modern estate in Highland Park, snow fell in thick, suffocating sheets. Inside, the air was warm. But Elara felt a chill that no amount of heating could dispel. It had been days of silence, days of pain meds and Lila's soup, days of Ronan Vale watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Not with fear, but with something foreign. Safety. Elara sat in the living room, a cashmere blanket draped over her legs. Her ribs still felt like a cage of broken glass every time she took a deep breath, but the bruising on her face was fading to a sickly yellow. On the massive flat-screen TV, the local news was playing. Garrick had tried to turn it off, but Elara had insisted. She needed to know what he was doing. The screen cut to a press conference outside the Chicago Police Department. Flashbulbs popped like gunfire, and there he was. Blaine Hart stood at the podium. He looked devastated. His hair was perfectly disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed, a masterclass in performance art. We just want her home, Blaine said, his voice cracking with practiced emotion. Elara has been struggling with mental health issues for some time. I fear she's had a breakdown, or worse, that someone has taken advantage of her fragile state. If you are watching this, Elara, please. I love you. We can work through this. Elara felt bile rise in her throat. He's lying, she whispered. He's making me sound crazy so no one will believe me. It's a standard play, a deep voice said from behind the sofa. Ronan walked into the room. He tossed a file onto the coffee table. He's painting a narrative. If you speak up now, you're the hysterical girlfriend off her meds. If you stay missing, he plays the grieving victim. He wins either way, Elara said bitterly, staring at Blaine's face on the screen. He always wins. Ronan walked around the sofa and sat on the coffee table, directly in her line of sight, blocking the TV. He reached out and took the remote from her hand, clicking the screen off. The room plunged into sudden silence. Look at me, Ronan commanded, soft but firm. Elara met his gaze. His eyes were dark, endless pools. He doesn't win, Ronan said. He thinks he's playing chess, but he's playing solitaire. He doesn't know I'm sitting at the table yet. Why haven't you killed him? Elara asked. The question shocked her. She had been a pacifist who wouldn't kill a spider. Now she was asking a Mafia don why her ex-boyfriend was still breathing. Because death is easy, Ronan said, and because he is useful. Blaine is the bridge to the Russos. If I kill him now, the Russians go to ground. I need to know what they are moving through his firm. Ronan stood up and extended a hand. Come, you need to move. Lila says the inactivity is bad for your lungs. Pneumonia is a risk with broken ribs. Elara took his hand. His grip was an anchor. He led her not to the gym, but to the kitchen. It was a domestic scene that felt surreal. The capo of Chicago stood by the granite island, rolling up the sleeves of his black button-down to reveal forearms corded with muscle and inked with faint scars. Can you cook? Ronan asked. I used to love it, Elara said. Before Blaine didn't like strong smells or noise or me being in the kitchen when he was home. Tonight we make risotto, Ronan stated. It takes patience, focus, It's good for the mind. For the next hour, the world of violence outside ceased to exist. Ronan moved around the kitchen with the same precision he used to dismantle empires. He taught her how to stir the rice constantly, how to add the broth ladle by ladle. "My mother taught me," Ronan said quietly as the smell of shallots and white wine filled the air. "She said that cooking was the only control we truly had. The world can be burning down, but if you respect the ingredients, the food will be good." Elara stood beside him, stirring the pot. Her side ached, but for the first time in years, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. "Why are you so good to me?" she asked, her voice small. "You barely know me." Ronan stopped chopping parsley. He turned to her, leaning his hip against the counter. The kitchen lights cast shadows across his sharp jawline. "I told you," he said. "I don't like bullies." "It feels like more than that," Elara challenged him, emboldened by the wine she'd been sipping. Ronan stepped closer. He reached out, his thumb grazing her cheekbone, avoiding the fading bruise. The air between them grew thick, charged with an electricity that made Elara's breath hitch. "You have fire in you, Elara," he murmured. "Blaine tried to drown it. I want to see it burn." He leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips. Elara's heart hammered against her broken ribs. A good pain, a living pain. Broong, broong. The landline on the wall, an encrypted secure line, rang, shattering the moment. Ronan pulled back, the warmth instantly vanishing from his eyes, replaced by the cold steel of the capo. He picked up the phone. Vale. He listened. His jaw tightened until a muscle ticked in his cheek. "How bad?" Another pause. "Burn it. Leave nothing for the cops. I'm on my way." He slammed the phone onto the receiver. "What happened?" Elara asked, the fear returning. "One of my warehouses in the South Loop," Ronan said, grabbing his jacket from the chair. "Firebombed. Some of my men are in critical condition." "It's Blaine," Elara said, a realization hitting her. "It's the Russians." "It's a message," Ronan said, checking the magazine of a handgun he pulled from a drawer. "They know I have you. They're trying to flush me out." "Ronan," Elara stepped forward, grabbing his arm. "Don't go. It's a trap." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up to her eyes. "I know it's a trap, Kara. But if I don't show up, they think I'm weak. And in my world, weakness is a death sentence." He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Hard, brief, possessive. "Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Garrick." Then he was gone, leaving Elara alone with the half-finished risotto and the terrifying realization that she wasn't just a guest anymore. She was the cause of a war. Ronan didn't return that night, or the next morning. Elara paced the house, her ribs throbbing in protest. Garrick had stayed behind as guard duty, pacing the perimeter like a restless Rottweiler. By the afternoon, Elara couldn't take the passive waiting. She went into the library, searching for a distraction. She found a computer terminal. It was locked, obviously, but next to it was a stack of physical files Ronan had been reviewing. She knew she shouldn't look, but desperation makes people nosy. She flipped through a folder. It was intel on Blaine. Photos of him meeting with men who looked like they were carved out of granite. But it was the financial documents that caught her eye. Elara had been a forensic accountant before she met Blaine. He had forced her to quit, saying it was too stressful and that he would take care of her. But the skills hadn't vanished. She scanned the bank statements Ronan's team had hacked. Shell Corp Alpha, Cayman Holdings, LLC Beta, and then she saw it. A signature on a transfer authorization for millions. It wasn't Blaine's signature. It was hers, Elara Voss. The room spun. She grabbed the desk for support. She had never signed that. Never. Then she remembered the insurance papers Blaine had made her sign. He had been frantic, saying they needed to update their life insurance policies. He had flipped the pages so fast, pointing, sign here and here and here. She had trusted him. Oh my God, she whispered. She wasn't just his girlfriend. She was his mule. He had opened offshore accounts in her name. The Russian money was being washed through her. If she went to the police, she would go to prison for money laundering. Blaine had set her up perfectly. But more importantly, if she disappeared, the Russians couldn't access the money. They needed her biometrics or her physical signature to move the funds again. That's why they were desperate. That's why they were burning down Chicago to find her. It wasn't about love. It was about millions trapped in a ghost account. Her new phone buzzed in her pocket. She froze. Only Ronan had this number. She pulled it out. It wasn't Ronan. Incoming call. Unknown ID. Her thumb hovered over the decline button, but a gut instinct, a sick, twisting feeling, made her answer. "Hello, Elara." The voice was choked, panicked. "Kai," she gasped. "Kai, oh my God, are you okay? Where are you?" I don't know." Sigh. Kai stammered. She heard a dull thud in the background and Kai groaned. "Some guys, they came to the garage. They said they need you to come home." Another voice took the phone. It was heavy, accented, Russian. "Miss Voss," the voice purred. "We have your brother. He is resilient, but everyone breaks eventually." "Don't hurt him," Elara pleaded, tears springing to her eyes. "Please, he has nothing to do with this." "He is family," the Russian said. "That is everything. You have time. Come to the shipyard, Dock 4, alone. If we see Vale, your brother dies. If you are late, your brother dies." The line went dead. Elara dropped the phone. She couldn't breathe. Her ribs felt like they were collapsing inward. She had to go. She had to save Kai. She looked out the window. Garrick was by the gate, smoking a cigarette, his back to the house. If she told Garrick, he would call Ronan. Ronan would turn it into a raid. The Russians would kill Kai the second they saw a Vale soldier. She had to do this alone. Elara ran to the mudroom. She grabbed a heavy coat and boots. She found a side door that led to the garage. Ronan's fleet of cars was there. She didn't have keys, but she saw a delivery van, a catering truck that had dropped off supplies earlier. The driver was nowhere to be seen, likely in the bathroom or chatting with the staff. The keys were in the ignition. She didn't think. She climbed in, wincing as she pulled the door shut. She started the engine. She drove out of the garage, the tires crunching on the snow. Garrick turned at the sound, shouting, reaching for his weapon, but she gunned it. The van skidded through the open gate before the electronic lock could engage. She was loose, and she was heading straight into the lion's mouth. The drive to the shipyards was a blur of a gray sky and white snow. Elara's mind was racing. She knew she was walking into a trap. She knew she probably wouldn't walk out. But the image of Kai, her big brother who had raised her when their parents died, being beaten because of her, she couldn't live with that. She arrived at Dock 4. It was a desolate wasteland of rusted shipping containers and icy wind. She parked the van and stepped out. The cold bit through her coat. "I'm here," she screamed into the wind. "Let him go!" A metal door on a large warehouse slid open. Blaine Hart stepped out. He was flanked by large men in leather jackets. "Elara," Blaine said, opening his arms as if welcoming her to a dinner party. "You look terrible, darling. Has that animal been mistreating you?" "Where is Kai?" Elara demanded, walking forward. She kept her hands visible. "He's inside," Blaine said, his smile tight. "He's fine. A few bruises. Nothing compared to what you've caused me." He walked toward her. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this has been? The police, the press, my clients are very unhappy, Elara. You froze their assets." "I didn't do anything," Elara spat. "You stole my identity. You put that money in my name." Blaine stopped, looking impressed. "So you figured it out? I always said you were smarter than you acted." "Yes, the accounts are yours, which is why I need you to sign a few things. Then you and Kai can go." "Liar," Elara said. "Once I sign, we're dead." Blaine shrugged. Maybe. But if you don't sign, Kai dies right now. Slowly, while you watch. He grabbed her arm, the same arm Ronan had touched so gently the night before. But Blaine's grip was bruising. He dragged her toward the warehouse. "Get off me!" She struggled, twisting her body. "Stop fighting!" Blaine raised his hand to backhand her. "Babe." A sound like a silenced whip crack cut through the air. Blaine screamed. His hand raised to strike suddenly exploded in a spray of red. A bullet had gone clean through his palm. He fell to his knees, clutching his mangled hand. "I believe," a voice thundered from the shadows of the shipping containers, "she said to get off." Ronan Vale stepped out from behind a stack of crates. He was wearing a tactical vest over his suit, an assault rifle held loosely in his hands. He wasn't alone. From every shadow, figures emerged. Dozens of them. Garrick was there, looking murderous. Men on the rooftops, men on the cranes. The Russians flanking Blaine reached for their weapons, but red laser dots appeared on their chests instantly. "Don't," Ronan warned. "My snipers are bored." The Russians raised their hands. Ronan walked toward Elara. He didn't look at Blaine, who was sobbing in the snow. He looked only at her. His eyes were furious, blazing with a terrifying intensity. "You ran," he said, stopping inches from her. "They had Kai," Elara whispered, trembling. "I couldn't let them hurt him." "You think I would have let them hurt him?" Ronan roared, his composure cracking. "You think I am so incompetent that I can't save one mechanic?" He gestured to Garrick. "Open the warehouse." Garrick and two others kicked in the side door. Moments later, they emerged, supporting a limping, battered, but very much alive Kai. "Elara!" Kai rasped. "Kai!" She rushed to him, hugging him carefully. Ronan turned to Blaine, who was trying to crawl away, trailing blood in the snow. Ronan walked over and placed a boot on Blaine's chest, pinning him down. "You used her brother as bait," Ronan said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You hit her, you stole from her, and you inconvenienced me." "The Russos," Blaine gasped. "They will kill you. They own this city." "The Russos are currently busy," Ronan said. "While you were luring Elara here, my men were visiting your Russian friends at their headquarters. The Russo leadership has been retired." Blaine's eyes went wide. "No, that's impossible." "I told you," Ronan leaned down. "I'm not a lawyer, Blaine. I don't play by rules. I rewrite them." Ronan pulled a pistol from his hip. Elara turned around. "Ronan." He looked at her. "He broke your ribs, Elara. He was going to kill your brother. He treats you like property." "I know," Elara said, her voice shaking. She walked over to where Ronan stood over Blaine. She looked down at the man who had tormented her, the man who had made her feel small, worthless, and weak. "Don't kill him," Elara said. Blaine let out a breath of relief. "See, she loves me." "Shut up," Elara snapped. She looked at Ronan. "Don't kill him because it's too quick. He cares about his reputation, his money. Destroy that first. Make him watch as you take everything he stole. Make him rot in a cell knowing he's a pauper." Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then a slow, dark smile spread across his face. It was a smile of pure pride. "Garrick," Ronan barked, "patch up his hand, then call the FBI. Send them the files on the money laundering. Anonymously, of course. Tie it all to Mr. Hart. Let the feds have him." Garrick grinned. "With pleasure, boss." Ronan holstered his gun. He reached out and grabbed Elara, pulling her flush against his hard chest. He didn't care about the audience. He didn't care about the blood in the snow. "You ever run from me again," Ronan growled into her ear, "and I will burn the world down to find you." "I promise," Elara whispered. "Good." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was acclaiming. It tasted of adrenaline and winter and survival. But just as Elara melted into him, a deafening explosion rocked the ground. The warehouse behind them, the one Kai had just been pulled from, erupted into a fireball. The shock wave threw them all to the ground. Debris rained down. Elara's ears rang. She felt a heavy weight on top of her, Ronan shielding her body with his own. He lifted his head, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. He looked toward the burning wreckage, then to the perimeter. Gunfire erupted from the east side of the dock. "Ambush!" Garrick screamed. "It's a second wave. Take cover." Ronan grabbed Elara, hauling her up. "Can you run?" "Yes," she gasped, though her ribs were screaming. "The Russos weren't all dead," Ronan cursed. "We have to move now." They sprinted toward the maze of shipping containers as bullets sparked against the metal around them. The war wasn't over. It had just entered the second act. The air at the Chicago shipyards had turned into a toxic soup of black smoke and freezing sleet. The explosion had severed the power lines, plunging the maze of shipping containers into a strobe light nightmare, illuminated only by muzzle flashes and the roaring fire of the warehouse. Ronan kept a hand on the back of Elara's neck, guiding her low through the narrow alleyway between two rusted stacks of steel. Her breath came in sharp, ragged hitches. Her ribs were screaming with every step, a choir of agony that threatened to buckle her knees. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. "Garrick!" Ronan barked into his earpiece, his voice barely audible over the chaotic din of gunfire ricocheting off the metal containers. "Status: pinned down at the east gate." Garrick's voice crackled back, breathless, and accompanied by the heavy thud, thud, thud of suppressing fire. It's Dmitri Russo himself. He didn't trust his lieutenants. He brought the heavy guard. "They have thermal optics, boss. They're closing the net." Ronan cursed in Italian, a harsh, guttural sound. He pulled Elara into the shadows of a blue Maersk container, just as a line of bullets stitched holes into the metal where they had been standing a second before. "He wants the money," Elara gasped, leaning against the cold steel, clutching her side. "He can't kill me. If I die, the encryption keys die with me." Ronan looked down at her. His face was smeared with soot and blood, his suit jacket torn, but his eyes were focused, calculating. He knows that. He'll shoot to wound. He'll take you, torture the passwords out of you, and then kill you. I won't let that happen. "We can't outrun them," Elara said, the reality setting in. She peeked around the corner. Shadows were moving systematically, cutting off their exits. "They have us boxed in against the water." Ronan checked his rifle. "I have half a magazine left. My sidearm is full. I can buy you time. There's a gap in the fence near the water. It's a drop into the lake, but the current is weak there. You swim to the pier. I'll hold them here." Elara grabbed his lapel, pulling him down to her level. "No, Ronan, no." She found a reserve of strength she didn't know she possessed. "You came for me when I was nothing but a wrong number. You walked into fire for me. I am not leaving you to die in the snow while I swim away. We finish this together." Ronan stared at her. The scared girl from the apartment was gone. In her place was a woman forged in violence. He nodded once, a grim appreciation in his eyes. "Together," he agreed. "I have an idea," Elara said, pulling out the phone Ronan had given her. "You said they have thermal optics. They're relying on tech because of the smoke." "Yes. This phone." She tapped the screen. "It's connected to your network. Can I access the shipyard's manifest system?" Ronan frowned, then understood. "The crane controls, they're automated." "Give me seconds," Elara said, her fingers flying across the screen. Her forensic accounting background meant she knew how systems talk to one another. She bypassed the firewall of the shipyard's localized network. "They're coming," Ronan warned, raising his rifle. Two figures emerged from the smoke, tactical lights sweeping the ground. Ronan fired, 2 shots, 2 drops, but more were coming. "Got it," Elara whispered. She hit execute. Above them, The massive overhead gantry crane groaned to life. The siren wailed, a banshee scream that confused the approaching Russian hit squad. The giant magnetic clamp descended rapidly, not over them, but behind the enemy line, crashing into a stack of empty containers. Crash! The impact shook the ground like an earthquake. The stack of containers toppled over, creating a domino effect that crushed the path behind the Russians and sent a cloud of metallic dust and snow into the air, blinding the thermal sensors. "Now!" Ronan roared. He broke cover, not running away, but charging forward into the confusion. Elara followed, keeping low, clutching the phone like a weapon. They broke through the line of bewildered soldiers. But as they reached the edge of the dock, a figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. He was massive, wearing a long fur coat that looked ridiculous, yet terrifying. Dmitri Russo. He held a high-caliber revolver, and it was pointed directly at Elara's chest. "Clever girl," Dmitri sneered, his accent thick. "But the crane moves too slow to save you from a bullet." Ronan froze. He was feet away, his weapon raised, but Dmitri had the drop. "Drop the gun, Vale," Dmitri commanded, "or I open a hole in your pretty investment." Ronan slowly lowered his rifle to the ground. "Let her go, Dmitri. The money is gone. I burned the accounts." "Liar," Dmitri laughed. "She is the key. Come here, girl." Elara stepped forward, her hands raised. She looked at Ronan. His eyes were pleading with her to run, to do anything, but she held his gaze. "You want the money?" Elara asked, her voice steady. "I have it right here." She held up the phone. "Bring it." Dmitri beckoned. Elara walked until she was arm's length from the Russian Don. She could smell the vodka and stale smoke on him. "It's all in the Cayman account," she said. "Millions." "Transfer code is—" She paused. "Is what?" Dmitri demanded, his greed making him careless. He glanced at the phone screen. "Is go to hell?" Elara whispered. She didn't hit a transfer button. She hit the button for the shipyard's floodlights, the high-intensity halogen security beams directly above Dmitri's head. Click! The lights flared on with the brightness of a supernova. Dmitri yelled, blinded, throwing his hand up to shield his eyes. It was the only opening Ronan needed. He didn't reach for his gun. He lunged. He tackled Dmitri, driving him back toward the edge of the icy dock. The revolver went off, the bullet tearing through the sleeve of Ronan's coat, missing flesh by millimeters. The two men hit the ground, a tangle of limbs and fury. Dmitri was stronger, but Ronan was faster, and he was fighting for something more than money. Ronan landed a brutal elbow to Dmitri's nose, shattering it. Dmitri roared, trying to gouge Ronan's eyes, but Ronan caught his wrist, twisting it until the bones snapped. The revolver skittered across the ice, sliding toward the water. Ronan stood up, dragging Dmitri by his fur collar. He hauled the Russian boss to the edge of the pier. Below, the black water of Lake Michigan churned, filled with jagged chunks of ice. "For my city," Ronan snarled, "and for my girl." He shoved. Dmitri fell. He didn't scream. There was just a splash, and then the dark water swallowed him whole. The freezing temperature and the shock would stop his heart before he could ever surface. Ronan stood, panting, his breath pluming in the cold air. He turned to Elara. She was shivering, the adrenaline crashing, the pain in her ribs returning with a vengeance. He walked to her, wrapping his arms around her, burying his face in her neck. "It's over. It's actually over." In the distance, sirens began to wail. Not police, Garrick's cleanup crew, and behind them, the real authorities coming for the remnants of the carnage. "Kai?" Elara asked weakly. "Garrick has him in the SUV," Ronan promised. "He's safe. We need to go." He picked her up, careful of her ribs, and walked her away from the edge, away from the water, and back toward the warmth of the life she had accidentally texted her way into. Later, the sun over Lake Como was different than the sun in Chicago. It was warmer, goldener. Elara sat on the terrace of the villa, a laptop open in front of her. Her ribs had healed, though she still had a small ache when it rained, a reminder of the night she shattered. She typed the final command into the terminal. The last of the dirty money from the Hart accounts had been successfully donated to a network of women's shelters across Illinois. It was anonymous, untraceable, and ironic. Blaine's greed was now funding the escape of women exactly like the one he had abused. Speaking of Blaine, the news tab in the corner of her screen showed the update. Former high-profile attorney Blaine Hart sentenced to years. The FBI had found enough evidence to bury him for lifetimes. He had tried to cut a deal, but with the Russos dismantled and Ronan pulling strings from the shadows, no one was listening. He would rot in a cell, terrified and alone. "You're working too hard," Elara smiled without looking up. Ronan walked onto the terrace. He was relaxed, wearing linen trousers and a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. The tension that used to live in his shoulders was gone. He placed a glass of wine on the table and rested his hands on her shoulders, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. "Just finishing the final transfer," she said, leaning back into his touch. "The Robin Hood project is complete." "Good," Ronan said. "Garrick is firing up the boat. Kai is already down there fixing the engine, even though nothing is wrong with it. He just likes to tinker." Elara laughed. Her brother had adjusted well to their extended vacation in Italy. He was the head mechanic for Ronan's collection of vintage Ferraris now. Ronan turned her chair around so she faced him. He dropped to one knee. Elara's heart skipped a beat. "What are you doing?" Ronan took her hand. His thumb traced the lifeline on her palm. "That night," he said softly, "you texted a wrong number. You asked for help. I've been thinking. What if you had typed the right number? What if you had called your brother?" "I would be dead," Elara said honestly, "or in prison for Blaine's crimes." "Fate," Ronan mused. "I never believed in it until I saw your name on my screen." He reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a ring. "Not yet." He pulled out a phone. It was her old phone, the one with the cracked screen from that night. He had fixed it, preserved it. "I kept this," he said, "to remind me that the best thing that ever happened to me started with a mistake." He stood up, pulling her to her feet. "I love you, Elara. Not because I saved you, but because you saved me right back." Elara looked at the man who had burned down a city for her, the monster to the world, but the savior to her. "I love you too, Ronan," she whispered. He kissed her, and this time there was no blood, no snow, no gunfire, just the sun, the lake, and the promise of a future that belonged entirely to them. Elara's journey from a victim trapped in a penthouse to a survivor commanding her own destiny proves that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. She didn't just survive her trauma, she dismantled it, turning the tools of her oppression into the keys to her freedom. Blaine Hart rots in prison, not because of a hero in a cape, but because a woman and a villain decided to rewrite the rules together. It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, one small action, even a typo, can change the trajectory of our entire lives. Wow, what a ride. I still can't believe she had the courage to confront the Russian mob boss at the docks. That moment with the crane, pure genius. But I want to know what you think. If you were in Elara's shoes, would you have forgiven Blaine to save yourself? Or would you have done exactly what she did and burned his world down? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and karma hitting back, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next twisted romance story. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.